So Noah and Travis.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Noah first, because I think that obviously more people probably follow Noah, and more people know kind of what he's done in the past. And then for him to finish the first workout in almost, I think, 800th place.
I think it was like 830 or something.
And then obviously he made up a ton of ground. I mean, he was like a 30th, a 4th or 3rd, a 6th, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, or how did the Open play out for you guys? Emotionally, what were you thinking? How did you change his training? What were your conversations like with him?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the entire Noah path was kind of, it goes really all the way back to the games. Like, we had really high aspirations leading into this past year's game. So we started working together, and he had his worst finish ever at the games, didn't feel good, didn't feel confident, come back the next year, take 4th, right off the podium, and took 4th with a couple huge bad errors, like him having like meltdown-based experiences on the training floor. So like, you take those out, and it's like, oh, here's somebody who could be on the podium. We go to the next year after like PRing pretty much everything that we worked on that year, and like...
Hold on, the year he got 4th was y'all's first year working together?
Yeah.
I think the way you just said it made it sound like that wasn't. So that was the first year?
Our first year working together was right after the 2016 games, where he had his worst finish. So our first training year together took him into his best CrossFit season at the games. That was 4th. Then the next training year was leading into last year's games, where we went in with those same aspirations and just had like all the bad, like the pedal falling off, just like all the experiences we already covered in another media piece where people could hear what actually happened. But he still took 6th, so it was still his second best finish ever at the games. So a lot of positives, and then a lot of things were like, all right, we got to work on this. He's moving back home. Now he's losing a really good training environment, really good training partner. How do we fix that? Like, Joanne was full support staff for him. Now she's going back and getting her PT degree. They're going to own a house, which is new. So like,
a lot going on.
Yeah, life's mounting. And then, bam, the sport's changed. And that, I think, really rattled a lot of people's worlds, but definitely Noah, because he's a big presence in social media, sponsorship, like that. A huge part of his identity, his career, his profession, all of that stuff is wrapped into there. Whereas for Trav, even though it's just as big, he also is a gym owner. So like, for him, if worst case scenario happened and the games was just canceled and it's gone, he still has a place to make a living, and he still has a reason to do CrossFit, be involved in CrossFit. Right. That's very different for people who are full-time athletes. So now there's that whole weird thing that Noah was going through. Then went to Wodapalooza, didn't have the best performance on the first day, crawled back to 3rd, but it's still like, he was 3-time reigning champ at Wodapalooza, and then to go there and take 3rd is like, still doesn't feel great. Then he's won the Open before, he's taken 2nd in the Open before. The Open's generally like kind of a joke for him. And so expectations from his own perspective, like I am generally more just pessimistic and realistic. Like, I'm always like, let's see what happens. Yeah. Not like it's gonna be bad, but just, I don't take things for granted that it's gonna work out. Whereas Noah, I think, and rightfully so, athletes need to believe in themselves, believe that it was gonna be good. So the first week was kind of like a, oh, wow, shock to the system type thing. And then you're doing math from the past years, trying to figure out what 20th place is gonna be in the cut line.
Did you do that after he told you his score?
Yeah, I did.
What were your thoughts? I think that's because people have asked me, like, hey, did he do the math, or did you do the math and say, like, hey, it's going to be really hard or impossible?
I mean, I don't want to say that it was impossible, because I did have a bet with Travis. We had said, we based it off of the last couple of years, and if you look at them, there was one where it was like 1,200 points, but that was the year where there was a 1-rep max in the data set, which potentially changes things, because there's some just really strong people that aren't really that fit that can just add to total points. And then other years where he was already over the 5. So it was kind of like, hey, we got to see how many tests come out. Like, if the Open format's different and now there's 7 tests, maybe he's got a shot. So I knew it was going to be tight, but I also didn't want to lose hope. So my conversation with him was like, all right, let's just climb. And then I think from there, the next 3 weeks were really good. Like, he executed really well. He had some really good finishes. He was climbing the leaderboard. And then it was week 5. He was coming up here. The goal when we set it out was like for him to come out here, him and Travis to be able to throw down, have a celebration about them both qualifying. Like, that's what you're working towards. And then it turns out, like, you go and do the math and you're like, oh, well, no matter what you do on this workout, you're not going to qualify, which definitely takes away some of the competitive drive. And then the last workout wasn't really that great. I ended up getting sick that day. It was just like not a great finale experience to it. But I'd say from an execution perspective, he did pretty well. It's just like,
still a great score.
Yeah.
And he could have cut off a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look at all of the 5 weeks, he still did pretty well on everything from an execution perspective. He didn't look at any of the workouts and was just like, oh man, like, you lost your chance here by not executing. It was literally just, it was a conversation I had with him when we first started. I was like, you can be the best or one of the best in the world at this sport, comma, but this needs to get worked on. And we've just slowly been working on those things, but you know, it's like Fikowski. Fikowski's taken 2nd in the world, 4th in the world, 3rd in the world, but in the Open, he didn't even get close to qualifying because they're just some of the skill sets that he gets exposed in when you put them against 300,000 people take him far down on the leaderboard. But from an aggregate fitness perspective, if you're just looking at the people that are going to be at the competition, that means, okay, he's going to take one workout that's going to be, you know, in the bottom of the pack, and then he's going to be in the top of the pack on another bunch of them and come up. So I thought that he executed pretty well. Hopefully that's an impetus for him, A, to get fired up to go win a sanctional, to make it, and B, to continue to invest in the things that he's not as good at, doesn't like as much, like cyclical stuff and grunt work is not the most fun, or like a Metcon with heavy repeatable barbell stuff mixed with running. Like, that's not the most fun and enjoyable feeling experience type stuff to do in a workout or in a training session. But now he's got even more of a reason with this evolution in the sport to be like, all right, if you want to be at the games in continuing years without having to do, you know, all these sanctionals and go and win them, or wait for a backfill spot, you got to get better at them. So hopefully it ends up being a good thing.
And he has, though. Like, he was up here for 18-1 last year when there was rowing, and his average pace this year was faster than last year's pace. It's just the nature of the workout and the time domain, and then obviously, again, we talked about the possibility of, was it really 19 cals? Maybe some people were letting it roll over, getting off. Like, there's a lot of things, and that's not an excuse, but... Yeah,
25 cals an hour off the pace he needed to hold. Like, that's not...
Or maybe even less, because we went over the stats and first thoughts, and it wasn't much to gain, you know, 5 or 6 seconds a round, which over the course of even 9 rounds, you're talking about 45 seconds.
Yeah, he needed 1.5 seconds a round.
Right.
So it's not like the gap is as wide as it looks like to say, well, he took 830th place, when the, like, to probably get into the top hundreds, it was, you know, it's just
it was only a few reps
bit,
for 300 spots. I know that.
Yeah.
And then obviously to get a little bit more than maybe 7 or 8 reps.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's still a lot of positives to take from it, but crappy-ish feeling experience.
I mean, I know it sucks, but it's the same thing with Wadapalooza for him. And this is, when he was up here, we talked a little bit about this, and I was just like, what's more impressive to me is he bombed day 1 at Wadapalooza. Yeah. And obviously he realized that, and he came back and he executed almost perfectly the rest of the weekend as far as at least placings go. I know there's some things he could have done better, but it's a pretty great weekend the rest of the way. And it's like, well, it'd be nice if you can race the first day. You can't, and that's just, it is what it is. But the same thing, I mean, look, he could have got first place on the last 4 open workouts. He still wouldn't have qualified, so it wouldn't have mattered. But he still pushed himself the rest of the weeks, and it gives him some fire to, like you said, go out and win a sanctional. I mean, that's where he's at right now. And I think putting your, you know, you're jumping in the fire a little bit, and you get burnt, and you figure out, like, okay, am I willing to do this or not? And that's where you need to be sometimes.
Yeah, my running joke with Trav is just adversity trained. Like, anytime something bad happens in life and whatever, you just think like, all right, this is making me a stronger individual, more resilient to emotional turmoil, physical stress. So you can choose to look at those situations and take personal responsibility or blame. You can say like, oh, I suck, I'm not good at rowing, I didn't have enough progressions, yada, yada, yada. Or you can just like say like, all right, this is hardship, now figure out moving forward, which I have a little bit more control of what I do behaviorally moving forward than looking back. Just like, all right, moving forward, now I'm going to fix this shit so that something like this doesn't experience again.
Yeah.
So
that's what Travis has done.
That's my
going to Travis.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, think about what last year's regionals. You know, he had a couple disappointing finishes on some workouts. I know that Linda crushed him when I think he was probably a minute off of his training time or 2 minutes off his training time.
Yeah, I think he was like a minute something.
Yeah, but that workout, do you remember where he finished 20?
Yeah, I think he was like 26 and 18 on his 2 lowest ones.
Yeah,
and had he just done his training time, he would have
qualified and he's at the games.
Yeah.
Obviously, he doesn't make it. And I'm sure there were some tough conversations for you guys. And I want to go back to you and Noah's conversations about moving forward. But